When my tire blew out in front of a small-town Texas elementary school, I thought it was just bad luck. But as I stood there in the heat, I saw my husband walk out of the school gates, holding the hand of a little girl who called him Daddy. We don't have children, and in that single moment, my world began to unravel. The truth would lead me through betrayal, heartbreak, and revenge, but it would also set me free in ways I never imagined. It started like any other Thursday morning in Cedarfield, Texas. The kind of morning where the air smelled faintly of gasoline and breakfast tacos. The sky was wide and blue, too blue for what was about to happen. I was late for work again, juggling a travel mug of coffee, my purse, and a stack of lab reports I hadn't finished the night before. My husband, Robert, had left early for a meeting in Dallas. He'd kissed me on the forehead, said something about traffic, and drove off before I could even remind him to feed the dog. We'd been married 8 years. Long enough to fall into routines. Long enough to trust the silences. But that morning, something felt off. Halfway down County Road 17, I heard a loud pop followed by the familiar, dreadful thump thump thump. My front tire had blown out. I pulled over in front of the Cedarfield Elementary School, the same one I used to pass every morning but never paid attention to. Kids were spilling out of cars, laughing, backpacks swinging. I stepped out, shielding my eyes from the sun. And that's when I saw him. Robert. Standing on the sidewalk. In his blue shirt, the same one I ironed for his Dallas meeting. He wasn't alone. He was holding the hand of a little girl, maybe 6, with chestnut hair that shimmered in the sun. She wore a pink backpack and looked up at him the way daughters look at fathers, with unfiltered love. Then she said it. "Daddy, can we get ice cream after school?" My heart stopped. We don't have kids. We never could. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd lost my mind. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was a look-alike. But then he turned his head slightly, that same profile I'd memorized. The sharp jaw. The tiny scar near his temple from college. It was him. And the way he smiled at that little girl. I hadn't seen him smile like that at me in years. Something inside me broke quietly, not loud, not dramatic. Just, like glass slipping into water. I ducked behind my car, heart pounding. My phone trembled in my hand as I lifted it to take a picture, proof that I wasn't crazy. But before I could, Robert's gaze swept across the street, almost as if he felt my eyes on him. Our eyes met. Only for a second. He froze. The girl tugged on his hand, asking something I couldn't hear. He forced a smile, nodded, and guided her toward a silver SUV parked near the gate. He didn't wave. He didn't call out to me. He just looked away and walked off like I was a stranger. I stood there in the Texas sun, sweat dripping down my neck, trying to understand what I'd just seen. A tire hissed quietly beside me. Somewhere, a school bell rang. And my marriage, the one thing I thought I could rely on, began to feel like a well-rehearsed lie. That night, I didn't confront him. I couldn't. Instead, I acted normal, cooked dinner, asked him about his meeting. He told me it went well. He even smiled, the kind of tired smile people wear when they think they've gotten away with something. When he went to shower, I checked his phone. Nothing. No strange numbers, no texts. He'd deleted everything. But what he couldn't delete was that image burned into my mind, a man I thought I knew holding a child that couldn't possibly be ours. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing her voice. "Daddy, can we get ice cream after school?" The way she said it, so casual, so familiar, told me this wasn't a one-time thing. It was routine. They had a relationship. The next morning, I pretended to oversleep. Waited until I heard the garage door close. Then I followed him. His Dallas meeting turned out to be a stop at a quiet suburban neighborhood 20 minutes from town. He parked, stepped out with a small lunch bag, and walked to a modest one-story house with a white picket fence and a plastic tricycle in the yard. And when the door opened, a woman stepped out. She was younger, early 30s, blonde hair in a messy bun, wearing one of those oversized shirts women wear when they're comfortable at home. She smiled when she saw him, the kind of smile you don't fake. Then she kissed him. Not on the cheek. Not politely. On the lips. That's when I started shaking. I couldn't even breathe. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the ease of it. The practiced comfort. Like they'd been living this life for years while I was just the shadow wife. I took pictures, my hands trembling so badly half of them came out blurry. Then, as I was about to drive off, I saw the same little girl run out of the house, backpack bouncing, yelling, "Bye, Daddy." And he turned that same loving smile again, waving like the proudest father alive. But I wasn't just a wife anymore. I was a witness. A witness to a life I wasn't supposed to see. If you've ever felt that moment when your heart drops because the truth finally shows itself, you know how it feels. Don't just scroll, subscribe. Stay. Because what came next is the part nobody prepares for. The next time I saw her, she was sitting in my living room. The morning after I followed him, everything in our house felt like an exhibit in a museum of lies. His toothbrush next to mine, his shoes by the door, the faint scent of his cologne that used to comfort me, now it just clung to the air like smoke after a fire. I kept telling myself, you need proof. Real proof. Pictures were one thing, but he could twist those. Say it was a coworker or a friend. No, I needed to hear it. I needed to watch him lie to my face again before I decided what to do with him. That evening he came home late. He looked exhausted, or maybe that was guilt hiding behind his eyes. He dropped his keys, loosened his tie, and said, "Long day." I smiled back, lied through my teeth, I bet. We sat in silence for most of dinner, just forks scraping porcelain. He asked about my day. I said it was fine. He didn't notice that I barely ate a thing. Or maybe he did, and he was just pretending like always. It's strange, isn't it? How easily someone can live inside the same four walls as you, and still be a stranger. That night, after he fell asleep, I went into the guest room with my laptop. I looked up the address of that little white house, the one with the picket fence. Property records said it was owned by Lauren Mitchell. 32. Single mother. A familiar name. I'd seen her before. Years ago at Robert's company Christmas party. She was an intern then. Shy. Fresh out of college. She wore a red dress and laughed at all his jokes. He introduced her as the new assistant. I remember thinking she looked at him the way I used to. Now she was his mistress. And that little girl his daughter. For days I carried that secret like a shard of glass in my chest. Pretending. Smiling. Cooking dinners I didn't eat. Listening to him talk about his business trips, when I knew exactly where he was going. But then, everything changed one Friday night. He came home earlier than usual, holding a small wrapped box. "Got you something," he said. My heart twisted, because for a moment, a pathetic, fleeting moment, I wanted to believe it meant something. That maybe, deep down, he still loved me. I opened it slowly. Inside was a gold bracelet, simple, elegant, but when I flipped it over, I froze. Engraved inside were the words, "To LM Love. R. LM Lauren Mitchell." He'd given me her gift. I looked up, forcing a smile so tight it hurt. "It's beautiful," I said. He smiled. "Glad you like it. I thought it'd suit you." I wanted to scream, to throw it in his face. But instead, I wore it. Because that's what women like me do, we play along until the truth becomes a weapon. The next morning, I drove to her house again. I parked across the street and watched as he walked out holding a small bag, probably the real bracelet meant for her. He placed it gently into her hands. They hugged. Then she said something that hit me like a bullet through glass. "Daddy said he might move in soon." I barely heard the rest. My pulse roared in my ears. Move in? He was planning to leave me. Or worse, replace me. That evening, when he came home, I acted normal again. Made dinner, poured wine, laughed at his small talk. Then, while he showered, I searched his phone again, and this time, I dug deeper. Hidden in a folder labeled invoices were screenshots of money transfers. Regular payments to L. Mitchell. Thousands every month. Labeled as child support. That's when the truth stopped being a secret and became a plan. I started documenting everything. Dates, times, transfers. Every excuse he made. Every meeting that didn't exist. At night, I'd sit by the window, scrolling through photos of them together captured from afar. He looked so happy in those pictures. And I looked like a ghost haunting my own life. But grief has a way of mutating into something darker. Something sharper. It was no longer about heartbreak. It was about balance. He'd taken 8 years from me. So I decided I'd take something back. It started with a phone call. I called his office pretending to be someone from HR. I asked a few harmless questions about his Dallas trips. The woman on the phone hesitated, then said, Robert hasn't had any out-of-town meetings this quarter. That's when I knew I had everything I needed to destroy him. But I didn't want to destroy him fast. I wanted him to feel it. Slowly, like poison in his veins. A week later, on a quiet Saturday morning, I was folding laundry when the doorbell rang. I opened it, and nearly dropped the basket. Standing there was her. Lauren Mitchell. Up close, she looked nervous. Tired. Her hands fidgeted with her keys. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said softly. "You must be Evelyn, right?" Hearing her say my name made my stomach twist. "Yes," I said slowly. "Can I help you?" She glanced back at her car, a silver SUV. The same one from the school. Then she took a shaky breath. I think we need to talk. It's about Robert." The house went quiet. Even the air conditioner seemed to stop humming. I studied her face. She wasn't smug. She wasn't defiant. She looked broken. And for a second, I didn't know whether to slam the door or hug her. "Come in," I finally said. She stepped inside into the house built on the ashes of my marriage. She looked around slowly, eyes landing on the photos on the mantel, our wedding picture, a trip to Galveston, birthdays that suddenly felt like fiction. She whispered, "He told me you two were separated." I laughed, a small, bitter laugh that came out like a sob. "Of course he did." She nodded, tears welling up. "I found out a few weeks ago. I thought you should know." She looked down at her hands. "He's been lying to both of us." It was strange how easily empathy can slip through anger. We sat across from each other, two women bound by one man's deception. Enemies on paper, allies in pain. She showed me photos him with the little girl, Emma. Trips, picnics, birthdays. All the moments I never got to have. Then she said something that froze me in place. "He told me he's filing for divorce soon. He said you'd cheated on him, and that he wanted full custody." "Custody?" I whispered. "For Emma?" She shook her head. "No. For our baby." "I'm pregnant." The room spun. My pulse hammered. My mouth went dry. She was pregnant. And he was planning to make me the villain. In that moment, everything changed. The grief burned away, leaving something colder. Clearer. He wasn't just a liar. He was a strategist. And he thought he'd already won. But he didn't know what I'd found. He didn't know what I could do. I smiled faintly at her. "Thank you for telling me, Lauren," I said softly. "You've done the right thing." She nodded, confused by my calm. But inside, I was already building the blueprint of his downfall. Because if Robert wanted a custody battle, he was about to get one. Just not the kind he expected. Some truths don't break you, they shape you. Pause. If you've ever felt that quiet rage, that slow-burning clarity after betrayal, don't look away now. Subscribe, stay with me. Because the next part is where I stopped being the victim and started becoming the storm. After Lauren left that day, I sat on the couch for hours, unmoving. The house was quiet, painfully quiet. Her words kept replaying in my head. "He told me you cheated, and that he wanted full custody. Custody of a child that wasn't even mine. Custody of a life he built from deceit." That's when it hit me. Robert wasn't just cheating. He was replacing me. And I'd been watching it happen in real time. For years, I thought the worst kind of betrayal was sleeping with someone else. I was wrong. The worst kind of betrayal is rewriting someone's story while they're still alive in it. That night, I went to the garage and pulled out an old cardboard box from our attic. Inside were receipts, insurance papers, financial records, things I hadn't looked at in years. I spread them across the dining table like puzzle pieces. The picture that formed wasn't of a husband. It was of a man double-lifing his way through two realities. 2 phone plans. 2 credit cards. 2 sets of travel expenses, one for business, one for weekends that never existed. And the cruelest part, he'd been using our money to fund his secret family. I felt my pulse spike, but I didn't cry. Tears were useless currency now. This was no longer heartbreak. It was war. I knew I couldn't expose him yet. Not to her, not to anyone. Because if Robert could lie this well, he could fight dirty. So, I decided to become just as dangerous quietly. For 2 weeks, I kept my mask perfectly in place. I kissed him goodnight. I laughed at his jokes. I made breakfast every morning, all while recording every phone call, every excuse, every trip he took. He didn't notice me watching because he'd already stopped seeing me. And that blindness became my weapon. It started small. I moved money from our joint account into my personal one in amounts too small to trigger suspicion. I made copies of all his tax returns, pay stubs, and transfer receipts. I even set up a camera in the garage hidden in the light fixture just in case he ever brought her here. Because part of me knew he would. Then one night, it happened. It was a Friday. He said he was going to a late meeting. He wore cologne, the kind he hadn't worn for me in years. I waited 15 minutes after he left, then checked the garage camera feed on my phone. And there it was. His car pulling back in. Not even 20 minutes later. He wasn't alone. Lauren stepped out. Pregnant. She looked around nervously before he led her inside our house. Their laughter echoed faintly through the living room speakers connected to the system. My hands shook as I listened. She asked, "Are you sure she's not coming home?" He chuckled. "Evelyn's clueless. She believes anything I say." Anything. I watched them walk toward the guest room, the same room we used to store Christmas decorations, and close the door behind them. I could have burst in. I could have ended it right there. But instead, I hit record. Because that moment, that arrogance was going to cost him everything. I sat there in the dark, the blue light from my phone flickering across my face. Watching. Listening. My hands clenched so tightly my nails drew blood. Every minute burned, but I stayed. Because the more I watched, the less I loved him. And the less I loved him, the freer I became. The next morning, I made coffee as if nothing happened. When he walked into the kitchen, humming, I smiled. He kissed my cheek and said, "Morning, sweetheart." I almost laughed. "Sleep well?" he asked. "Better than ever," I said. He didn't know the double meaning. I was sleeping well because I knew he was about to wake up in a nightmare. Later that week, I met with an attorney. Not to file for divorce. Yet. Just to understand my options. The woman across the desk listened quietly as I explained, leaving out no detail. When I told her about the child, the affair, the pregnancy, she just sighed. Then she said, "If you want to take him down legally, don't act yet. Keep gathering, keep pretending. You're sitting on gold." Gold. That's what betrayal looks like in the courtroom, evidence with teeth. And so I did. For another month, I lived my role perfectly. He'd come home late, I'd smile. He'd lie, I'd nod. Meanwhile, I was transferring documents to a secure drive, setting traps with quiet precision. But something unexpected happened. One night, Lauren called me. Her voice was trembling. "He's been different lately," she said. "Cold, secretive. I think he's seeing someone else." I almost choked on the irony. He was cheating on both of us with a third woman. That's when I realized he wasn't a husband or a lover. He was a collector of hearts. Breaking one just made room for the next. And for the first time, I didn't feel pain. I felt clarity. The next day, I called Lauren back. "Let's meet," I said. This time, not as rivals, but as witnesses. We met at a cafe near the highway neutral ground. She brought her daughter, Emma. Watching Emma eat her pancakes with sticky fingers was surreal. Her smile. Her eyes. They looked so much like his. That's when the weight of it finally hit me. The child he hid wasn't guilty. She was innocent, a victim of his choices, too. And somehow, I knew my revenge couldn't just destroy him. It had to expose him so the truth could free everyone he'd hurt. Lauren agreed to help me. We made a pact, quiet, dangerous, and bound by shared humiliation. We'd record everything. Track his lies. Uncover his web piece by piece. And when the time came, we'd pull the thread together. Weeks went by. He started to unravel. The late nights became frantic. His calls shorter. His excuses weaker. He'd look at me sometimes suspiciously, like he could feel something shifting. But by then it was too late. Because every secret he kept was now sitting in my cloud folder, labeled with dates and audio. Then, one evening, he came home early. Unannounced. I was in the office, listening to one of the recordings, his voice whispering sweet lies to Lauren. When I heard the front door slam, I panicked and hit pause. He appeared in the doorway, eyes narrowing. "What are you doing?" My mind raced. But years of pretending paid off. "Work report," I said smoothly. "Why?" He studied me for a long moment, like he was trying to read my soul. Then he smiled, that familiar, Deadly smile. Nothing. Just thought you looked nervous. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. Because the next time he tried to lie, the next time he dared to underestimate me, I'd already have the stage set. That night, I opened my laptop and wrote a single sentence in my journal. Tomorrow, I stop being his wife. Not legally. Not yet. But emotionally. From that moment on, I became his mirror, reflecting back every lie until he couldn't tell which world was real. He wanted control. I'd let him believe he still had it. Until I turned it all inside out. If you've ever planned a revenge so quiet it scared even you, you'll understand what comes next. Don't miss it. Subscribe, and stay. Because in Chapter 4, Robert's empire starts to crack. And the first person to betray him won't be me. Days bled into nights. I went through the motions, brushing my hair, making coffee, pretending to be fine. But nothing about me was fine. Pause. My home felt haunted, not by ghosts but by the silence between us. Thomas stopped asking why I was quiet. Maybe he already knew. Or maybe he just didn't care to know anymore. Every evening, he'd return home smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine, soft, floral, too light to notice unless you knew what to look for. And I knew. Sometimes, I'd hear him humming while washing the dishes, as if he was trying to convince himself that everything was normal. I watched from the doorway, his back turned to me, and all I could think about was how many years I'd wasted trying to keep something intact that was already fractured beyond repair. One night, I couldn't sleep. The clock read 2:17 a.m. when I slipped out of bed and opened his briefcase. It was wrong, I knew that. But what he'd done was worse. Inside, tucked between receipts and paperwork, was a folded drawing, a child's drawing. Crayons. Stick figures. A man. A woman. A little boy. Above it, written in wobbly letters, me and Daddy. I stared at it for a long time, tracing the small uneven letters. Daddy. That word cut deeper than any betrayal ever could. I flipped the paper over. There, written in a grown woman's handwriting, were words that made my heart stop. Ethan drew this for you. He misses you. Ethan. The boy outside the school. He had a name. The next morning, Thomas sat across from me, sipping his coffee, scrolling through his phone like he didn't just shatter my entire world. Who's Ethan? I asked. He froze. The air thickened. His thumb hovered above the screen, unmoving. He looked up and for a moment his eyes flickered with something raw. Fear, maybe. Or guilt. Then came the lie. You must have misread something. No, Thomas, I didn't. He stood up, exhaled, and said, I think you're tired, Madison. You've been imagining things lately. That was it. That was his move. To gaslight me back into silence. But this time, he underestimated me. Days later, while he showered, I went through his phone again, not for messages this time but for photos. Hidden deep inside a locked folder was proof. A picture of him holding a child on his lap, both smiling in a park I didn't recognize. The caption beneath read, Sunday with my boy. My boy. I dropped the phone. My breath came in shallow bursts. I thought I'd be numb by then, but seeing his face, so full of love for that child, it broke me in a way words can't capture. That night, I packed a small bag. Not to leave, not yet, but to stay ready. I needed control. I needed clarity. So I started documenting everything, dates, times, the lies, the photos, the receipts. I didn't know where it was leading, but I knew one thing: this story wasn't going to end with me being the fool. Sometimes, justice doesn't come from shouting. It comes from silence, the kind that unnerves a liar more than any accusation ever could. And in that silence, Thomas started to falter. His voice cracked more often. His excuses got sloppy. He began checking his phone obsessively, as if expecting a storm to hit. He didn't know it yet, but I was the storm. Before we continue, take a second to breathe with me. Because this part, right here, is where everything shifts. If you've ever been betrayed and forced to smile through the pain, hit that subscribe button right now. Because you and we're about to walk into the same fire, and only one of us will walk out untouched. What I discovered next: the truth behind how long he'd been hiding Ethan wasn't just betrayal. It was cruelty wrapped in love. And it began with a single phone call. It was a Thursday afternoon when the call came. I almost didn't answer. The number was unknown, but something in my gut told me to. Is this Madison? A woman's voice asked. Yes, who's this? This is Clara. I. I think we should talk. It's about Thomas. The way she said his name soft, hesitant like she'd said it too many times before told me everything before she did. I didn't speak. I just listened. She continued. I know this is a shock. I didn't want to call you like this, but Ethan's school needed a second parent contact. He put your name down years ago. I think you deserve to know why. Years ago. Those words echoed in my head like a gunshot. We met at a cafe the next morning. She was younger than me maybe by 5 or 6 years. Blonde hair pulled back, tired eyes, a kind of nervous dignity that made me hate her less than I wanted to. When she saw me walk in, she stood. Madison? I nodded. We sat. Neither of us touched our coffee. She spoke first. Thomas and I, we met at his office. It wasn't supposed to happen. He told me he was separated. Said you were moving away for work. I wanted to interrupt, to tell her he lied, but she looked at me with that haunted guilt that said she already knew. I found out I was pregnant a few months later, she continued. He said he'd take care of us, but he couldn't leave you. He said you were fragile. Fragile? That was the word he used to keep me small. To make his guilt sound noble, he called betrayal protection. Clara reached into her bag and slid a small photo across the table. Ethan smiling, missing one front tooth holding a small paper airplane. He looks like him, doesn't he? She asked. He did. Too much. Same eyes, same smirk. That same dimple that used to charm me when Thomas wanted to defuse an argument. I stared at the picture until my vision blurred. How long have you known he was still with me? I asked. Her lip trembled. 2 years. 2 years. 2 years of living parallel lives, one wife, one secret lover, one child. He wasn't living a double life. He was living a full one. And I was the background noise that made it possible. When I got home that night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just planned. I started keeping my distance, observing. Watching the way he moved, what time he left, who he called. He didn't notice my silence anymore. Maybe he thought I'd finally given up. But in truth, I was studying him the way you study a puzzle before taking it apart piece by piece. I even began saving money, transferring little amounts every week into an account under my maiden name, just in case. The anger didn't consume me. It focused me. Because I realized something, that night revenge isn't about hurting them back. It's about showing them you can live better after they buried you. Weeks passed. The distance between us grew like a canyon, silent but wide. He started sleeping in his office more often. He claimed projects, deadlines, late meetings. But sometimes his tie smelled faintly of baby shampoo. And that made me hate him more than any affair could. Because it meant he wasn't just a liar. He was a father who'd chosen which child mattered more. One night, I called Clara again. She answered immediately. I'm not calling to fight, I said. I just want the truth. She sighed. He promised he'd tell you. He said he would, after Ethan's 6th birthday. And how old is he now? 7. That silence on the phone, the one that followed it, was heavy, suffocating, final. He'd been lying to both of us for 7 years. That was the night I stopped being the victim. I wasn't going to cry in the bathroom anymore, waiting for him to feel sorry. I wasn't going to hope he'd wake up one morning and realize what he lost. No. I was going to show him. I printed the photos. The receipts. The messages. The school contact forms. I organized them in a neat little folder, one labeled, Truth. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. Because real justice isn't loud. It's patient. And I wanted him to choke on his own secrets slowly. If you've ever been forced to smile through someone else's lies, I want you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button, not for me, but for the part of you that still wants to see the truth win for once. Because when I tell you what happened next, when the truth finally came out in public, it wasn't me who broke. It was him. The thing about lies, they're like cracks in a glass wall. You can't see them at first, but once light hits the right angle, everything shatters. It started on a quiet Sunday morning. He was half asleep on the couch, coffee mug resting on his chest, his phone beside him. I'd stopped checking it weeks ago, not because I trusted him, but because I no longer needed proof. But that morning, fate decided to hand me one final piece. The screen lit up. A message popped through before it dimmed again. Clara, Ethan asked why you don't come around anymore. Should I tell him? My hand froze midair. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. 7 years. 7 years of deception, and he still hadn't told the truth to his own child. I turned toward him. He was still pretending to sleep, breathing deep, too evenly, like a man rehearsing ignorance. He wasn't even worth shouting at. That evening, I invited Clara to meet me one last time, this time, not in secret. She looked nervous when she arrived. I could tell she expected a fight. But I smiled, calm, steady, dangerous. I'm not here to argue, I told her. I'm here to end this. She frowned. End what? Our silence. I pulled out the folder, Truth, and slid it across the table. Everything you need is in there, I said. Photos, dates, messages. I'm done protecting him. Her hand trembled as she touched it. What are you going to do? Nothing. He's going to do it to himself. And he did. The following week, Thomas's company held their annual family day picnic, the one event where every spouse, partner, and executive's family was invited. He'd begged me to attend this year, saying he wanted to make things right. I agreed. But this time, I came prepared. When he introduced me to his colleagues, I smiled, shook hands, laughed politely. But inside, I was counting down every second. And then, as if the universe had been waiting for the cue, Clara appeared, holding Ethan's hand. You could feel the air shift instantly. People whispered. Cameras turned. His boss's wife gasped. It was perfect. He froze when he saw her. His face went pale, then red, then pale again. Madison, he whispered. What did you do? Nothing you didn't already do yourself. Clara stopped a few feet away. Ethan looked up at him and said, in the clearest voice, Daddy, why are you scared? That single sentence broke him. He reached for the boy, but Clara stepped back. People were watching now, too many to lie to. I turned to leave, and as I walked away, I said, maybe now, Thomas, everyone will finally see the man you really are. By the time I got home that night, the photos were all over social media. Someone had recorded it, his double life collapsing in real time. His company suspended him within days. The local paper picked it up. The title read, Executive Secret Family Exposed at Company Picnic. Karma had a sense of humor that day. He came home once after that, just once, to pack his things. He didn't beg, didn't argue. He just stood there, looking around like a stranger in his own life. I wanted to tell you, he said. No, Thomas. You wanted to keep both of us. He looked down. I never meant to hurt you. I almost laughed. Almost. You didn't mean to hurt anyone, I said. You just didn't care who got hurt as long as it wasn't you. He left that night. The sound of the door closing was softer than I expected, but it echoed like an ending. If you're still watching right now, let me ask you something. Have you ever been so betrayed that even revenge feels empty? Because that's where I was. He'd lost his job, his reputation, his carefully curated image, but none of it made me happy. Not really. Sometimes justice doesn't taste sweet. It's bitter. Cold. But it's real. I sat alone in our living room that night, staring at the faint ring on the coffee table where his mug used to sit. For years I cleaned that ring every morning. Now I left it. A reminder that some stains aren't meant to fade. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. That innocent boy who never asked to be part of this. Who would one day grow up and wonder why his father disappeared from his life. He didn't deserve the consequences of his father's sins. So I wrote a letter, one I'd never send, addressed to him. Dear Ethan, I don't know if you'll ever understand what happened between your parents, but I want you to know that none of it was your fault. Your father made choices that broke people who loved him. But you were never the reason. You were the only innocent part of all of this. That letter sat in my drawer for weeks. Sometimes I read it when I felt angry, to remind myself what really mattered. If you're still here, don't leave yet, because this is the point where life starts rebuilding itself, piece by fragile piece. Subscribe if you believe in bittersweet justice, because what happens in the next chapter is the part where I stop surviving and start living again. After Thomas left that night, the house felt empty in a way I hadn't imagined. Not just the physical absence, but the weight of his lies, the years of deception finally lifted from my shoulders. I wandered from room to room, touching surfaces that had once been markers of our life together: the coffee table, the couch, the stack of magazines he never read. Every item was a memory, every shadow a reminder of the man I thought I knew. And yet, the quiet didn't feel lonely. It felt free. In the days that followed, news of his downfall spread like wildfire. Colleagues whispered. Social media erupted. Friends, family, neighbors, everyone knew about the double life, the hidden child, the affair that lasted 7 years. I walked through the grocery store and felt eyes on me. Whispers. The occasional, I saw what happened. I didn't feel shame. I didn't even feel anger anymore. I just felt resolved. But then came the hardest part: rebuilding trust. In myself, in life, in the idea that love didn't have to be a trap. I'd spent years questioning every word, every touch, every glance. Now I had to unlearn that fear, brick by brick. I confronted him one last time, not in anger, not in tears, but in quiet authority. He tried to apologize. "I never wanted it to go this far," he said. "I know," I said. "And yet here we are. You wanted control, you wanted to dictate who I was, who my life could be." That ended. His eyes flickered, searching mine, perhaps hoping for some sign of regret. But I had none left for him. He was a cautionary tale now, not a man I once loved. Meanwhile, Clara and I kept in touch. We spoke about Ethan, about co-parenting, about how to shield him from the chaos his father had created. And in that collaboration, in that shared concern for the child Thomas had neglected, I found something unexpected: strength. Not revenge, not malice, just control. I realized that the real consequence wasn't public humiliation. It wasn't the loss of a career. The real consequence was that Thomas had lost his power over people he thought he owned. He had underestimated the woman who stayed, the woman who watched, the woman who recorded quietly. And that was all the justice I needed. Weeks passed. I started rebuilding my life. Slowly, small victories, a new apartment, a renewed career. Late-night walks where I didn't have to explain myself. I learned to sleep again without listening for imaginary phone calls, without calculating lies before breakfast. Ethan became a quiet, constant presence. Sometimes he stayed with Clara, sometimes he came over to my apartment for weekends. Each smile reminded me that Thomas's betrayal hadn't reached everyone. Some innocents survived. And that gave me peace. Thomas tried to reach out once more, months later, asking to see Ethan. I let Clara handle it. The child needed a father, but only under terms that Clara and I set. I didn't interfere, because the point wasn't punishment anymore. The point was boundaries, and boundaries are stronger than anger. I realized then that the deepest consequences of betrayal aren't always visible. They aren't headlines or social media posts. They are the quiet rebuilding, the reclaiming of your life, your voice, your time. If you're watching this, you might be carrying someone else's betrayal on your shoulders. Know this: the consequences will arrive, maybe not as you imagine, maybe not immediately, but they will. And when they do, you'll find that strength doesn't come from revenge alone. It comes from standing unshaken when everything around you falls apart. That night, I sat by my window, looking at the stars. No anger, no pain, just clarity. The world hadn't punished him fully, but life, in its quiet and unforgiving way, had. And I had survived it. Sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's just inevitable. And the next chapter is where I finally close the door. For good. The house was quiet again. This time, truly quiet. No lingering tension, no unspoken words hanging in the air like smoke. Only me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of someone else's deception pressing down on my chest. I poured myself a cup of tea, set it on the kitchen counter, and let the sunlight warm my hands. I thought about Ethan, about Clara, about all the pieces Thomas had tried to scatter across our lives. And I realized something: life doesn't always give closure in the form of apologies. Sometimes it gives it in the form of survival. I started writing again. Not emails to him, not letters to the world, but my own words. Words that weren't meant to explain, justify, or accuse. Words that simply belonged to me. I reflected on the betrayal, on the heartbreak, on the years that were lost to someone who never truly valued me. And I let myself grieve. Properly, for the first time. No pretending, no hiding. Grief, I realized, wasn't weakness. It was clarity. Months passed. Thomas faded from my life completely. His attempts to contact me or influence Ethan's life were filtered through Clara, carefully monitored and limited. I built new routines, new friendships, and even ventured into dating again cautiously, with walls I once thought unnecessary but now knew were essential. And in all of this, I discovered the most important truth: surviving betrayal doesn't just mean enduring pain. It means reclaiming your identity, your peace, and your future. Thomas had wanted to control me, to define me, to trap me in his lies, but in the end, I defined myself. I sometimes think of him, the father of a child he tried to hide. I don't feel rage anymore, just the memory of someone who lost his way while I found mine. Ethan is growing up surrounded by love, both from Clara and, in a controlled way, from the father who failed to be honest, and I can watch it happen without anger, because that is justice in its quietest form. A life rebuilt despite deceit. And me? I'm free. Free to be myself, free to love again, free to write my story, the story he tried to rewrite with his lies. If there's one thing I want you to take from this, it's this. Betrayal may break your heart, humiliate your trust, and shatter the life you thought you had. But it can never take your strength. It can never take your integrity. It can never take the part of you that chooses to rise above. Justice doesn't always arrive in dramatic, cinematic moments. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it's quiet. But it's inevitable. And often, it's far more satisfying when it unfolds without you having to lift a finger. So if you've ever loved and been deceived, know this: the worst of them may seem invincible, but they are never stronger than the truth. And you are stronger than anyone who ever tried to break you.